Good morning. It's 1 minute past the hour, so we'll wait 2 or 3 more minutes before really getting started, but actually we're going to get started now. My name is Carlos Estrada. My name is over there. I co-direct the fellowship with Dr. Pat Patrician, the Quality Scholars Program, and we're here to share some experiences about writing. I will not be doing the talking. Well, I'll be doing some of the talking, but the purpose is for you to get something useful out of these 45 minutes, and we'll be finishing by 9. That way they have time to rearrange the setup. Okay? Oh, my qualifications besides those listed there. I'm happy to share that I had paper number 100 accepted last week. And that's because, honestly, for the most part, we don't... Oh, I like that. That's in the golf, correct? For the most part, we usually don't sort of share those successes and so forth, but I was so excited that I had to tell someone. So you are the second, third, fourth, fifth. I told Bob Center the first time, so anyhow. So, having said that, I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to. I hate writing. Actually, that's not true. There are portions of the writing process that are fascinating, extraordinary, energizing. All of that comes before the paper is published or accepted. Working with you guys, thinking about the research project, the who cares, so what, the excitement, the presentations, the poster, all of that is what makes me tick. The writing part, not so much. Having said that too, I love to write the methods, results of the paper. I think I'm very good at doing that. Intro and discussion, I used to think I was good at that. It wasn't. And that's when I lean on people. Yeah. Sonia, you love this. How should we frame this? Correct? Oh, I thought about this and that. So this is just, if someone, how many of you hate writing? Just be honest. Please be honest. Hate. Okay, got it. How many of you love to write? 1, 2. Don't be shy. How many of you are good at writing? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. That's okay. That's okay. That's okay. That's okay. It's okay. So everyone else, please take notes who raised their hands the last 2 times and just work with them. Anyway, enough for an intro. Oops, that's not. I have only 2 learning objectives. And if you're going to distribute these slides after the fact, unless they are posted or will be posted at some point, feel free to use them, reuse them, recycle, give me credit or not, it doesn't matter. As long as this is something helpful to you, that's helpful. If there is a copyright picture and this and that, you're on your own. I didn't ask permission of anything. To increase awareness of strategies to enhance success. So that's one point. And to recognize the steps of the writing process. Only 2 learning objectives. And this is the roadmap. A little bit of an overview, reflections on writing, steps of the writing process, and wrap up. I'm going backwards. You recognize that image, correct? Rodin, the thinker, in somewhere in Paris. And there are specific steps for the writing process. How many of you consider novices? Don't be shy, that's okay. Semi, not novice, okay? How many of you consider experts? Come on.
I think it's something in between.
come on. So the idea is at some point, however you define novice, those are the first baby steps. Sometimes you write in your high school book and this, and it doesn't matter what the level of novice is. Some of that may be scientific writing. And then you are somewhere in the medium steps. I mean, I have kids who are adults now. And sometimes it's in the medium. So chances, Emily, I don't think you are in that stage, but perhaps a little bit more. All of that is relative to where you are. Very few people are at that level, Olympian winner and so forth. So let me stop here for a second. I want you to share in groups of 2 or 3. What are you working on? Writing? All of this is about writing, not what am I going to have dinner or coffee, which is important too. So share what are you working on. 1 or 2 liners. This is not your 10-minute dissertation. Okay, 1 or 2 liners. 2, what works for you in terms of the writing? Okay, so you have 2 minutes in groups of 2 or 3. What are you working on? 1 liner. 2, what works for you? 2 minutes. Sweet. 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 2 minutes are up. 2 minutes are up. So thank you. I'm sure you're dying to share, and you will share in a second, but at least you share with each other, which is the important component. So keep those. There is a one-page handout there for people who just came. If not, share. So keep those thoughts as to what works for you. Yeah, just think about what works for you, what worked for the other person, as we continue with the presentation. Anyone working here in the behavioral changing area? The Prochaska stages of change model. That's okay. It's a model where this was begun in, I think, smoking cessation. Please don't discredit me if that's not the case, but that's what I thought it was. It's been used in other areas. We go from pre-contemplation in the smoking area. I don't have a problem, dog. I don't have a problem. Contemplation. Oh, I think I should quit, but I'm not ready to. Okay? I'm not going to ask if you're a smoker or not, but I'm sure you have friends or family or friends and patients and so forth who are smokers or not. So you recognize that, which is very hard to do in terms of quitting smoking. The preparation is, Doc, I need to quit smoking, but I still do. But I'm thinking about quitting smoking. So you begin seeing some of the signs that the patients tell you about. And then finally they come to your office or to the pharmacy and they say, hey, I need help quitting. And then once they quit, there is a maintenance phase. You want to prevent relapse. And from what I remember, depending on the smoking cessation approaches, 10 to 30% people quit smoking at 1 year. 30% is way too generous. It's more in the 15 to 20% with high intensity. So thinking about that, doing the parallel with the other way. On writing. And you show me, I hate and despise writing. You are in the pre-contemplation phase. Don't wanna. And the reason why you're here and the reason why you're in academia is you don't wanna, but you know you should, correct? I don't wanna, but you know you should. To perhaps I should. You are a little bit more in the perhaps I should. Then you get prepared. I really want to, but I'm not ready. I need some help. Okay? You need some help, and then you begin to do it. And then you say like, you know what? This thing is for me. I want to keep on doing. And if the thing is not for you, stop doing at some point. But the advice is, no matter what you decide to do, writing is key for your career. Okay? So that's the parallel. Reflections on writing. You have a sheet of paper and you have already discussed those things. Write on your own 1 or 2 lines of what you have discussed before. Write 1 of 2 things. If you don't have a pen, I only have 1 pen. If you prefer to text to yourself, be my guest. So, answer those 3 questions, and they're in your paper. And you have 2 minutes to finish all 3. Actually, 3 minutes, 1 for each one. Ninety more seconds. Time is up. Item number 2. Share, discuss, friend, co-friend, new friend, for a minute. Item number 2, discuss, share, discuss with your friend, co-friend. Or there, whatever you want.
Thank you.
Got it. So what were some of the things that bubble up in terms of barriers? What were some of the things that bubble up in terms of barriers? Okay, do I need to wake it up? Wake up, wake up! This is working? Testing. Got it. So what are some of the barriers that bubble up in the conversations?
The feeling that it has to be really, really polished before you send it off, or you'll look stupid.
The feeling that needs to be polished before
other people see it, especially if they're not used to your writing style.
Yeah. Got it.
I think doing a literature review, that can take time, and you kind of don't want to do that.
Darn! I need to find what other people have done, correct? It's better to do it before you start.
Yeah, that's true.
And even if you do, it's good to do it during the process. And at the end, before you click submit. Correct? So doing a lead search, a little bit of, I want this to be perfect. What other things bubble up?
Attitude.
What do you mean? What do you mean? Are you saying that I have an attitude, or?
No.
Not right now. Look, listen.
No, but I mean, in your head, you build it up as this is so terrible, it's so boring. I'd rather go do laundry, or I got all these errands to run, and like you can get gratification because you complete a task probably really quickly. And with this, it's like you just knock out a chunk of it. It's not
the attitude is not fun, it's draining, it's like, oh God, if I can go and take an appendix out in 2 hours or less, how fun, the patient gets to go home. This paper, oh, got it. What else?
minimizing distractions.
Hey, what?
Minimizing distractions.
Tell me more about that.
email, phone, text messages, people coming in, talking to you.
Okay.
Trying
The
to
first
talk
three
about
that the first three that you mentioned, how many people do you need for those three? Email, phone, this. How many people do you need? No, I mean, do you text to yourself? No, to yourself. But you need two people, correct?
Sure.
Someone who sends that and someone to respond, correct? So the distraction is, you could just remove yourself from the conversation and then you are done, correct?
Right.
There is something there. Okay, so distractions. What else?
Because for me, it's the language.
The language.
I'm from China, so
okay.
I guess, yeah,
Language. Tell me more about it.
and so I can write very well in Chinese, but if I want to write in English, and actually there is a translation in my mind before I write it out in English. So
You now understand why I hate to write, correct? Actually, this was in Spanish too, so I'm from Peru. You'll notice that my accent is not a British accent. It's deep south from Peru. So how many people were not born here? Okay, you are from?
I'm from Italy.
Italy, I knew that, but I wanted to know.
Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico?
Uzbekistan.
Uzbekistan. Anybody else from
Haiti.
Haiti?
India.
India.
China.
And China. And Peru. Good. So, it's a barrier, correct? You need to learn the other language, unless that was the first language you learned. And then you think in that language, and then you have to translate every single thing. For me, I could never do math, and I will never be able to do math in English. Never, ever. So my math is in Spanish, in my brain. Now, after 30-something years, I begin to think and dream in English, which is sad for my kids or my family, but numbers, no way. What other barriers are there?
Time. We kind of touched on this, but just time.
Time, efficiency, and so forth. So if you noted, I couldn't make you stop. You kept on going and going because that's a huge area in terms of we need to let this go out. In that way we can address those. But at the same time, we're not going to go into a gripe group where we share and sort of pushes all of us into a spiral. And that's not the purpose. The purpose is to and let go. You mentioned all those things. Someone mentioned perfection. Correct. If you are beginning to take baby steps, do the kids care if they fall 10 times? Well, actually they do because they cry. But the idea is, if you begin, it's okay to fall down and just recover and so forth. So you mentioned a number of those. Getting into the zone. How do I find the space and the time? How do I create the time and space? So you mentioned some of those. Is there anyone in particular that catches your attention that has not been discussed already, that you thought of?
I hadn't thought about it, but I do think sometimes it's hard if you have to rely on other people for certain parts, and like things come up in their lives and in your lives, and sometimes your timelines are just getting extended further than you anticipated because you're waiting on other things to kind of happen that are out of your control or beyond your skill set.
I was looking to. Well, it's okay. Rely on others. Correct? If you're a team of one, everything is on you. If you're a team of two, everything could still be on you. If you have a science team with 10, 20 people, you go like, oh, I need a statistician, my mentor, this and that, and it's harder and harder to navigate that. So those are important barriers in terms of that. I wrote this down because I haven't thought about that before, so thank you.
And this IRB, like, if waiting to, or if you have to, deciding whether you need IRB or not, and then...
Got it. I'm going to put a hole on that and toss it out of the oven, because that can tell us into an important barrier for conducting research. Doesn't really impact the writing per se.
Okay.
It may impact the writing of your grant, which is very important. But part of this is all of those barriers for research that get in the way. Oh, I have to do the IRB. Oh, this other person didn't submit. So it's within the area, but a little bit outside. Let me do a timeout here for a second, and then we'll move on. The timeout is forget about the topic. Actually, don't forget too much about the topic. So put the topic aside and let's practice together a little bit of the metacognitive skills. And the metacognitive skills is self-reflection, which you did and you wrote, correct? But the metacognitive from the educational component is play the last 25 minutes tape back and forget about the content, but the process. Think about the process, how it play out. And let me just give you an example. I was merciless. I only gave you 2 minutes. And you go like, ah, what? As an example of the process. This one example. So put your metacognitive task hat and think about the process that we just went through. Thoughts? Josh?
Yes, sir. I'm trying to understand what you mean by metacognitive, or we're talking about what we just went through.
Yeah, without the content, but the process. And it's okay if you didn't get it. That's okay, because I did not explain it well.
Setting a timeline to come up with something. You gave us 2 minutes and gave us a distinct timeline to figure out what we needed to do, as opposed to saying, come back next week and give us barriers.
Yeah, why is that important?
Because it gives us a sense of urgency.
And why is the sense of urgency important?
Because you have to act.
And why is that you have to act?
Because you told me to.
Okay, and what will you do with the result? I had no option, correct? And what do you do with the result?
What do I do with the result?
Yeah.
I think about it and see how it worked.
And then you figure out where you are in that component and you say, okay, next thing. So that's one component, sense of urgency.
I guess kind of going along with your questioning, we had to share it, and so you're accountable to other people, to share your product.
Accountable. So there are two components of what you said. One is sharing, and the other one is accountable. Unpack those two concepts for me.
Okay. First we shared within our little group, and then we also shared with the rest of the group, and so that may have been a little bit more polished, the rest of the group.
Mm-hmm.
And then the accountability, kind of along with the timeline.
Mm-hmm.
When you have somebody else to share it with, I don't know, something about accountability. I mean, it's the same with smoking and other things
Correct.
too, is when you have somebody
So
else.
sharing and accountability, those are two key components from the educational perspective. It stops you on your tracks, checking your Facebook and your email, and makes you be present. So those distractions are not there. It wakes you up because this guy is boring, correct? And it's more interesting to share with you. Hi, this is the cool project I'm doing. So the sharing, pairing, it's sort of it's a calisthenics for your brain cells on the writing component. The accountability is very interesting because as words come out of your mouth, you may say like, oh crap, I forgot about this paper. Or, oh crap, I need to talk to my mentor, or what have you, correct? So it's internal accountability. And then as you share the story with another person, so there is a little bit of accountability. Keep that accountability in mind. Keep that accountability in mind. Why? Because I'm going to give you an assignment at the end to make you accountable. What other things? So we're still in the timeout metacognitive. Eve.
No, not gonna try, Pick on someone else.
I'm not picking on anyone.
Okay, repeat the question.
In terms of the process,
Sure.
what have you noticed? What have you noted? because you're here every time, and you assist, and you see different styles and so forth. So perhaps you are one of the best suited persons to compare and contrast. Just anything will be helpful.
What have I noticed?
Uh-huh. I don't want to put you uncomfortable. That's okay. You can come back.
Okay.
Your thoughts?
So, I was going to say, this may not be even the right thing, but you were saying kind of doing more reflection, and I'm just writing down, like, if you write something down, you know, like we talked about the perfection, you write something down.
Get started.
And exactly.
Hey, what?
You get started. And it like raises the wheel.
Oh,
you know,
correct.
and even if you put it like in an outline form or something like that, you got something on paper, and I think someone said or I read or something, you start with methods, you know, and then it gets you, you know, you write down one line in the introduction, and then you write a line in the discussion.
Gets you started. So you're touching on the content again, which is an important component.
Yeah.
But part of what you said is, once you put something in writing, it gets you started to do something, regardless of the content.
So it motivates you.
Correct. That's an important component. So we're going to go time in a second. So thank you for bearing with me and sharing. Part of that has to do also with how do we teach, how do we engage. The writing component is a way to encode people. I mean, encode in your brain. So you write, and the things get sort of written here in another part, you write. I don't know if texting does the same thing, but in the education, writing encodes the things deeper into your brain. It's like a pushing inside when you write. I do both. I text and type. The other component is, and I apologize if I made some of you feel uncomfortable. My apologies. And some of that is, this is a safe place, correct? This is a safe place where coaching, training, because sometimes the introverts, the people who prefer not to be placed on the spot and so forth, have the best ideas, period. They have the best ideas, period. And it's a way to invite you to speak up. And the other thing is, I was very deliberate in looking at people with the different gender, men or women. I was very deliberate. And I was inviting the voices to be heard, because there is so much culture about what you mentioned. I want people to know this thing to be perfect. Well, if you're an introvert and it was not what you used to do and so forth, you don't want to speak up to sound dumb, correct? And then we quiet our voices. And when the voices of the introverts are just spectacular. So, enough. I'm not lecturing. Well, actually, I'm sharing the metacognitive component. So hopefully that helps a little bit, Josh, to explain what I couldn't explain at the beginning. Yes?
I noticed that what people were saying reminds me of, there's a Leonard Bernstein quote, the music composer.
Mm-hmm.
So it goes across all areas. But to achieve something great, you have to have two things: a plan and not quite enough time. So you need a map, and then you also need pressure and a deadline. So.
Got it. As you tune out, please email me that quote, please. Thank you. A minute.
Yes, sir.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Okay, let's move on. Now, share your strategies for success. So we're going to practice what I just preached in the timeout for the people who have not spoken. That helps us two things. This is a safe space for people. There is no dumb, there is no no, this is a safe space for us to grow. We are going to practice that. And for the extrovert people who, like me, put your hand down and just hold your hand. Okay? So, the strategies for success.
Reading a lot.
A what?
Reading a lot. If you want to write good, you have to read a lot.
Read a lot. You remind me of a quote? No. What's the science? That's on the reference. Stephen King? Stephen King? Is that that's the name, correct? Got it. So I've read only one novel from, actually it wasn't a novel. Who has read Stephen King? Okay, what's that you have read? One or two things. It, okay.
So I've actually read On Writing, which you referenced here.
Got it. So at the time I read that book, that was the only non-fictional book he's ever written, and he says that in the intro, is Reflections on Writing. And if there is one book to read, that's the book to read. I mean, there are plenty of books, but I love that book. So the idea is you need to read a lot, and you need to write a lot. That's his quote, no mine. And yours too, correct? Okay, what other strategies for success?
Set soft deadlines.
Setting a deadline.
Inspiration, love what you want to write about, and being very inspired by the idea.
The idea, passion, horror. What makes you?
One night, just like
What makes you
just
take?
happens to me if I'm crazy in love with the idea of I want to share, I want to make a change.
Can you give us a personal example?
Yeah.
Can you give us a personal example?
Personal example?
Yeah.
Just the paper. I mean, I love
Yeah.
the subject.
Okay, what was the subject of the paper?
Healthy lifestyle.
Healthy lifestyle. Okay. Cool. Healthy lifestyle. Everyone goes like, I want that. Maybe not Frank. Yeah, he likes that too. Okay, what other things?
Could I ask a question to my colleague? Why'd you say soft deadline?
Because often in writing, you don't really have a hard deadline sometimes, or sometimes it's like a year ahead. I know for me, my pre-dissertation was set for this September, but I gave myself a soft deadline of last December, and I went ahead and completed it.
So sometimes the hard deadlines are scary. And then once you pass a hard deadline, you feel horrible and ashamed of yourself.
Yes.
If you do a soft deadline, that's a little bit less. That's a softer way, a kinder way. So be kind to yourself. Someone else was going to say something. Yeah.
Make an outline.
Make an outline. Got it.
Persistence.
Persistence. Tell me more about it.
To keep trying and not to give up because of failures or some interruptions in whatever you're doing and going back on track and like starting like where you left.
So persistence, and that goes along with the love and passion that you have. One or two more things, and then we'll keep on moving.
You may have talked about this earlier, but for me, actually carving out time, literally on your calendar, setting an appointment with myself for an hour, 3 times a week that is dedicated to writing. Because otherwise, the calendar gets filled with other things.
Meet with self at this place between 8 and 10. Tell no one. Turn off all social devices. Put my muffled noise cancellation either in mute or whatever type of music you love to write. So whatever works for you, correct? Awesome. So these are just some of the areas as it relates to scientific writing or writing in general. And you have touched on a number of things. Actually, you have touched on a number of things that are not included here. Forming a writing club. How many people have been part of a writing club? Tell me your experience.
Well, so I need to get a grant out, and I haven't been doing it, so I just started last week.
With whom?
Well, Lisa,
Your buddies.
and then a couple other people. Yeah.
Got it. You also had a writing club?
Yeah, I also have, and it's just a wonderful motivator. Sometimes, to hear how far someone else is moving, and to know that, at the beginning of the writing club, you're going to have to share about your progress.
The accountability, the competition. Someone says that I don't run, so please don't construe anything. That in the running tracking business, you have to have a tracker to keep the pace. If you run alone, you don't shape up as much, and that's the reason why people go. It's more fun and so forth. I am tall, so. Sweet. we're going to move into the steps of writing. So this goes into step number 1, step number 2, and so forth. People who know me know that I'm goal-oriented. You need to write a paper. Oh, okay, so the paper needs to be written, if that's what you want to do. If you don't want to don't have the passion, time on this, this may not be the time for you, correct? So goal-oriented. And there are, in my mind, 7. I should have done 5 or 10, but 7 sounded okay. Get organized, identify journals, get going, get moving, revise. If someone wants the slides shortly after, just email Eve. She has the slides. And she can send those to you. Revise, get feedback, get over, resubmit, become a reviewer, and then get organized again. And even though it's sequential, it's not sequential. I mean, there are lines crossing all over the place, okay? So let me show you one. Get organized. And these are the things that I have found extraordinarily helpful. I'm sure there is a bunch of other things, logistical things that work for you, but one is authorship, and I'll get to that in a second. Pulling the information, getting organized, I mean, just takes me still a number of either not milliseconds, perhaps an hour to 2 or 3 hours to get organized once we're in the process. And all of this assumes that I have already done the project, I already have done the data collection, and all of that is done. So this is not that component. This is you have everything, and you are in the process of writing. You pull your grant proposals, your results, your posters, your abstracts from everyone. Then you define your timeline and get going. You say, okay, I'm going to do this start this day. It could be a soft start, October 1st, with a soft deadline of January 1st to get methods written, for example. Whatever is your timeline. But then getting back to the authorship. I cannot emphasize as many times as I should this authorship. Who is in and who is out. It's critical, and it needs to be defined at the beginning. If you're a solo or work with 2, so let's say you 2 are working on a project, and it was your idea, you drove everything, you begin writing, and Jacqueline helps you, this and that. Who should be the authors in this group? Correct? Simple. If that is clear, if you have other people to help you, you can acknowledge that. Sometimes all of this table gets together and say, hey, we're going to write a cool project. And Sanya helped in some projects, you'll help with another area. Frank went and collected the data, and they say, okay, we have a product ready. Who should be authors? Why? They help participate. So keep that thought, because not everyone who participates ought to be an author. For example, I am the head of pathology, and I have these samples in my lab. And John comes to me and says, hey, can I do a study in your lab? Sure, John, here they are. Correct? And then I step out. And John does everything, from concept to design, to staining, to biochemistry, whatever. And with his group, correct? Why with the pathology? Is there any pathologist here by the chance? And I'm being cautious because I'm speaking from the tribe I belong to. I am really not aware, and I don't want to offend in any way, shape, or form to other tribes. Perhaps in other aspects and other professions, that is okay. Having said that, that's not okay, because we have international guidelines for medical ethicals and so forth. So for that, the pathology should not be included in that. And John said, but without those tissue samples, I would never have been able to do my study, correct?
You acknowledge that.
You acknowledge. I thank the department of this and that and so forth. Or if you think the pathology is going to make a significant contribution, you engage them at the beginning. Hey, you know what, I know this is not your thing, but you can, how can we make it better? and then you can engage them from the beginning. So, any tips from the collective audience about authorship? Success stories, horror stories?
I don't have a tip, I have a question.
What
Do
question?
you include your statistician as an author?
Do you include your statisticians as an author? Are there any statisticians in town? I mean, in the room? You can raise your hand. Statisticians.
Of course.
Say it again.
Of course include analysis.
Of course include them.
Yes.
Okay. Why?
They've done the work. I mean, they're part of the writing team.
Yeah. Okay.
And these are important people to include. Usually the second person. I don't know. First is the first who came up with the idea, and the second is the author. The second is the assistant.
Should you include your statistician?
I would say it depends on how much intellectual, like if you say, okay, I want you to do like X, Y, Z, and they do it, and you go back to you, that's probably not authorship. But if you sit down with them and say, this is a question I want to answer, how do I do this? And they contribute to the statistical plan and help with the methods, and absolutely.
So the answer, I think it depends. Similar to a pathologist who gave you the sample, correct? The statistician. Without a statistician, you couldn't run the study. And we've heard several people here before. Please come to me before you do your study, your grant, this and that, because we can help you design and so forth and be integral. And that becomes part of the team. So I think it depends.
And also statistician can help you write the methods section. Put together the methods section.
Yeah.
But then the question is, sometimes I've dumped data and they just process it and hand it back to me and that's what we did. And then sometimes they.
So,
I was just posing a question.
note to self, check the international guidelines of medical editors on authorship. I don't know if I have a slide here, I might. So note to self, if you're still curious about authorship, and you should be curious, international guidelines that is accepted by 250 medical, medical education, no, it's not medical education, it's medical college. Go ahead.
What's your opinion on, I agree that statisticians most times contribute significantly to it should be authored. But what happens when you have to pay the statistician as well?
That's part of it depends, correct? It depends. I mean, if you pay them because that's part of a grant and they help you do the study, design this and that, and wrote this on the paper and so forth, that's the thing. It depends. So this is a topic for, we couldn't spend an hour just talking about authorship. So, but at least I made you curious. You have questions, and there is no one simple answer, except the criteria for authorship in these international guidelines. And not everyone buys those guidelines, but all of the journal editors and journals who subscribe to those, they are going to ask you, please define authorship, and to be an author, you have to be A, B, C, and D, and so forth. Okay, let me go back. And so I just touched on number 2, and we will not have time, nor I had planned to spend all of the other ones. Which one of those numbers catches your attention or you are more curious about in the process?
What about 3?
What about 3? Okay, that's one idea. Another idea. Does anyone second number 3?
I've been really stuck on the get feedback part.
Number 5. Does anyone second? Okay, second. Fine. Sorry, you lost by 1. That's okay. Okay. How do you get feedback? In your experience?
Well, not like co-author feedback. I think that's usually pretty collegial and you're making the paper stronger. But when you submit and then you get reviewer comments before you resubmit, I think that's, I'm having...
Oh, the feedback from the reviewers.
Yeah. I'm having a harder time.
Doing what?
Well, sometimes, sometimes it's obviously it's very helpful because you obviously think you're explaining something clearly and you're not. and everyone that's on your paper thinks that they know the message and are doing it out, but obviously there's holes. So then sometimes you have people that do not give very useful feedback. It's like, did you even read the paper? And so and then, then you have to do the whole submission process again, which I find extremely frustrating. And it's like, I got over this hump to finally get submitted, and then you're starting over, and it just like takes the wind out of my sails. I'm just like, ugh, I have to like give myself a break from what I have to come back to later. I just can't even right then.
So thank you. So the idea is when you get feedback from the reviewer, some of those may be helpful, some of those are not. Two things. So one is how do you respond, and two, how do you cope, correct? And it's okay to let it go, this and that, go have a drink, or whatever, or run in Red Mountain, whatever is important, and I'll get to that. What were you curious about in terms of getting feedback?
Well, I would second that of like taking a break, when it comes back, or a paper. But I had found it very useful, just like reading, you select a journal and you read a couple of articles in that journal, even if they're not exactly your topic, to get the format and stuff. I think using your mentors to understand the right way to respond to reviewers, being on a couple of editorial boards at this point, I had the opportunity of looking at how people respond to reviewers, and there's definitely a way that will make your life a lot easier. It was a really good learning tool for me. I guess what I was going to say about getting feedback, I was thinking about co-authors, and I think particularly junior faculty, when you're trying to get feedback from your co-authors, and particularly your senior, and they're busy. I've just had a really nice experience with one of my mentees who's at Michigan. I just moved here, so
welcome to Birmingham.
Huh?
Welcome to Birmingham.
Great people. So I'm very happy. I was walking to my parking lot yesterday, pinching myself, saying, good choice. But anyway, so, we spent a lot of time revising things. I know he feels like he's, got to put in all these papers before his K. And he really, it was a really nice interactive process. I think it was probably hard for both of us. I had to do a lot of editing, and he had to do a lot of, going back and forth. But it ended up being really good. He was mindful of the fact that a turnaround of a week was probably the best I could do, given what I've got going in. But it was a really nice process, and I think rewarding for both of us. And I think working towards that, particularly to me with a senior author, is really important.
Those are excellent points. So the way how you revise that within the team and having that bond between the mentor-mentee, it works both ways. It's rewarding both ways. And to address some of the specific questions you had is, I have a softer approach now. At the time we submit papers, I say, let's plan 5 journals. 1 rich or 2 rich, 1 sort of in the middle, I'll be happy, and 1 lower end. So similar when you submit your applications. A rich, this is what I think I should plan, and this is my safe school, so to speak. So when I do this list, sometimes we say, you know what, this is not New England Journal of Medicine material. Okay, let's do this thing, which is okay, but then have safety journals for you. So the fact that you have to think about 2 or 3 puts in the mind, it's going to be rejected to the New England Journal of Medicine the first time, unless it's something super cool. So in that way, my mindset is, if it gets rejected within 2 hours of the submission, I don't get depressed. If it gets rejected after 6 weeks with reviewer comments, I don't get as depressed from that. So that's in terms of mechanisms for coping. The having a break is important, because sometimes in the heat of the moment you go like, you want to resubmit immediately. That's not going to be, there is too much emotion in that area. The aspect that, the other one that you mentioned is, I've been in editorial boards and review manuscripts and so forth. There are some reviewers that are just spectacular. Bullet by bullet, this is the problem, and this is how you can fix it. This and that, this is not clear, and this is how you can fix it. you forgot including these 2 or 3 references that are relevant to your work. Or your problem is fatally flawed. Your paper is fatally flawed. It's the worst thing that has ever come to my desk, this and that. But the idea is so important and so novel, even though you only have 4 patients in your study, that we want you to make it better, and they publish it. Correct? So even if you hear that harsh, they want to help. Those are the most helpful reviewers in my mind. Actually, there is a science on that. We published a couple of papers on how to be a good reviewer, and other people have done the same. So when you see these 1, 2, 3, 4 laundry pages, you go like, oh my gosh, what do you want? And what you see is there are people who have issues. I'm sorry, that's not on you, that's on them. They either know too much or that touches a nerve. So I think the key component of that, to sum up, is you need to let it sit, talk to your mentors, and then have a strategy plan. Which ones are the things that are going to make the paper better? Because it almost always does. And then as you respond, to say, you know what? There is a finesse how you respond. If you lash back to the author, say to the reviewer, I'm taking my submission from you, amazing, I'm going to JAMA. It's your loss. That's it. Or you can say, I really, thank you. Thank you. You could say, I really appreciate the feedback. This is very important. As you know, this and that and so forth. We're not going to review this because A, B, or C, if you ask for presentation. We are getting close to my promised time of 9 o'clock. We are going to exceed 4 minutes on that, but I just wanted to touch on those. As you receive the slides, feel free to select what you want. Well, some of that is something that we have touched on briefly, but then if you select the top, the arrow, it's going to take you back to whatever the first slide. Or you can just keep on going to the next item, resubmissions and so forth. So let me wrap up. These were our learning objectives. Increase awareness of strategies to enhance success, and you share a bunch in writing with yourself, and you will have the slides, and to recognize the steps in the writing process. And we just explore 2 out of the many of the 7. I'm sure someone can have different. This is your commitment to act. This is the responsibility, putting it right in. Whomever is interested in doing that, write that in your paper or send that to another person if you wish. If you don't wish to do that here, just write it to yourself and email that person. Hey, I commit to this method. And be nice and be soft to yourself. I mean, don't say, I need to submit this by Monday. Just be realistic, be nice to yourself. Correct? So with that, write it down, and I'll take any questions or comments at the end. I mean, now.
One thing my advisor told me, maybe it'll be helpful, is he always told me to always respond to every single point that you get when you get a review back, and to be thankful and all that. But I found that to be very helpful, because I've had reviewers say, thank you for responding to all of my comments, or something like that. So I think that kind of helps.
That's an important component. Respond to every one of the comments if you can pick them up. If you have 1 or 2 pages you cannot pick them up, go ahead and still respond in some structured form. Oftentimes the journals will submit in a structured form and say, please respond to every single point using this form, and do that. That's an important component. Thank you. Any other questions or thoughts? Yes?
I think it's important to have a first reader. So often if you're a trainee, it's going to be the senior author, but you don't want to send it out to your whole authorship team that's going to find all your missing commas and misspelled words. And, yeah.
So begin with a baby step that works with your mentor. It doesn't have to be perfect. It could be an outline. And sometimes once you do the outline, you can distribute that to all of the mentors and all of the co-authors and say, hey, this is the authorship. We decided that. Did we miss anyone? If you feel that you have not fulfilled these criteria, we will include you in the contribution sections or what have you. So it varies based on the style of the group. Becky?
Well, I was just going to say before we close, I would be really interested to see, I work with the Training Academy, and so hearing and seeing how many of you have participated in writing groups or don't participate in writing groups, if there is an interest in having a writing group come from this morning session. I know some of the T32s, they do it right after this group. So what I'd like to do is to add that in the evaluation this week and just have a question that if you would like to be part of a writing group, what would that look like? So if you do, just put your name on that evaluation piece. And be sure to complete the evaluation piece. It'll either come from Emily Levitan or Brian Wallace. And make sure to do that. And be sure to badge in outside. That's how you're going to get your evaluation.
Yes.
I have a question. What is your experience with scientific writers? You had one of the.
What's my experience?
Yeah, and how do you recommend? What point?
So, I've tried 2 or 3 times to get a scientific writers. I couldn't do it for 2 simple reasons. So the one I wanted was too expensive, and I couldn't afford. 2, the one I wanted that was here in town declined and told me I was someone who was not a scientific person, this and that, because how come you're reaching out to me because to write your science? This is shame on you. After that experience, I quit. Having said that, I've talked to people in other institutions, so friends at Michigan and San Francisco at UCSF, they use scientific writings all of the time. They include that in their grant proposals, in addition to the usual circles of friends. So if it works for you and you have the funds or the environment, go for it. One of my fellows, Quality Scholars Fellow, wrote 6 papers in 2 years. He was a writing machine. From Peru, his English was not very good like mine. And every time he hired one online. It was like $25 per paper or 50. And he said it was one of these online type of things. God, those are the best $50 that I invested. So I don't have an experience, but others do.
I would just say briefly for the question number 3, getting going. Sometimes it's so hard to look at a blank page and get over the hump, just get started. So as you read journals, if you see a opening salvo for a method section or something that you really like, take a picture of it with your phone, store it in favorites or in a file folder where you can get to it. Obviously, I'm not talking about plagiarism, but just as a way of, I really like this structure. Sometimes if you can focus in on something that's really well done and then say, okay, well, how could I make this my own? It's just a way of not having a blank page to look at.
That's wonderful. I'll be here for taking a few more questions for people who want to ask questions.